You're watching Dante's Boxing Nation. Woo!
What you think about the double standard, Floyd? They asked you to move up and fight a middleweight, but then they tell Andre Ward to leave Golovkin alone. I mean, what do you think about that? Is that a double standard in the sport of boxing, or what?
I can't knock what they say. You know, you gonna have people that have something to say. Whether you're doing good, they're gonna have something to say. Whether you're doing good or bad, they're gonna have something to say. But the thing is this: you'd rather be doing good and let them say, you know, let them speak about you, than doing bad and letting them speak about you. But you know, like I said before.
Dante's Boxing Nation, what's going on, guys? So that clip you guys just watched was a recent interview that I did with Floyd Mayweather. I'll put the information in the description box if you want to see that whole interview. Now, shortly after I conducted my interview with Floyd Mayweather, Ben from Fighthypes, he did an interview with Floyd Mayweather, and Floyd followed up on the same topic. But in this interview, he elaborated a lot more on the subject of Andre Ward, Golovkin, and the perception of Golovkin from the boxing fans all around the world. And when I say boxing fans, I'm talking about from the internet fans to the boxing writers to the boxing media in general. So anyway, just to give you guys a gist of what Floyd Mayweather had to say, I'll put the link in the description box so you guys can watch the entire interview on Fighthypes channel. But anyway, what Floyd Mayweather said in this interview, referring to Gennady Golovkin, is he won't be impressed with Golovkin until Golovkin steps up his game and fights Andre Ward. Floyd Mayweather said, I took the tough challenges in my career. Golovkin needs to do the same thing. He talked about the double standards that I asked him about in my interview when it comes to Andre Ward, when it comes to fans wanting Andre Ward to not fight Golovkin, but they want him to move up and possibly get beat against a bigger guy. Then Floyd Mayweather, he got real deep when he said that racism still exists. They want the pound for pound king to be Caucasian. In other words, Floyd is saying that they want the pound for pound king to be a white man. Now, before I hit you guys with irrefutable facts, let me ask you a rhetorical question. Does this sport have anything to do with race? Is boxing race driven when it comes to how fighters are treated? I'll answer that question with some facts. Now, I hung out with Abel Sanchez at Gennady Golovkin's training camp a while back, before I think he was fighting against Martin Murray. Abel Sanchez, he said some things that were very, very interesting, to say the least. Some of the things Abel Sanchez said, he told me, let's keep that off the record. So I'm not even going to tell you that, because I respect Abel Sanchez. I may not agree with what Abel Sanchez says when it comes to Golovkin not fighting Lara, but fighting Monroe instead, and telling me that Monroe is a bigger star than Edeslani Lara. I may not agree with stuff like that he says, but outside of boxing, I respect him. He's a very cool, very nice guy, okay? And I will respect him when he says off the record. But it's one thing he said to me that wasn't off the record. He said to me, he said, Dante, you know that when Golovkin first came to the States, nobody really wanted to work with him? He said, nobody wanted to work with him. He said, when Golovkin came to my gym, I jumped at the opportunity to work with him. He said, you know why? And I'm clueless. I have no idea. So Abel, he looks at me like I'm the biggest idiot. He says, you don't know why? Because he's white. This is what Abel Sanchez said to me. Now, oh, okay. Because he's white. You know, it's like I didn't expect him to be that upfront and be that honest. He said, because I knew that him being white, it would sell. Okay? So if you think about it, if you were just about to disagree with Floyd Mayweather's assessment of the sport, and you were about to say something like, this has absolutely nothing to do with race. Floyd Mayweather is just crying and coming up with conspiracy theories, etc., etc., etc. Well, I got bad news for you. You can't even say that anymore, because even Gennady Golovkin's own trainer, who is Mexican, by the way, even he agrees with Floyd Mayweather that they want a white pound-for-pound king. Even Abel Sanchez himself agrees with Floyd Mayweather. So was Abel Sanchez race baiting when he made that decision? Was he boo-hooing and crying? Was he trying to create conspiracy theories when he said that? Of course not. Abel Sanchez just knows what time it is, just like Floyd Mayweather knows what time it is, just like I know what time it is when it comes to the sport of boxing. There's a guy by the name of Maurice Starr. He's a songwriter. Any of you guys ever heard of him? Well, Maurice Starr, he's the guy that discovered the R&B dance group New Edition. Okay? Now, Maurice's next project was almost considered to be genius, because he intended to create a white version of New Edition named the New Kids on the Block, right? Because Maurice, he knew that if he had a white version of New Edition, they would sell 10 times more records. And that's exactly what New Kids on the Block end up doing. Matter of fact, this is exactly what Maurice Starr had to say about New Edition. Quote, I honestly believe that if they'd been white, the group would have been 20 times as big. And Maurice was right, because by 1989, New Kids on the Block was the fastest rising act in the United States. One more comparison. Let's talk about Little Richard. Little Richard is looked at as the man that pioneered rock and roll. Well, when Little Richard came out with this new sound that was so innovative, now everybody was buzzing about this new art of music called rock and roll, but America wasn't buying the albums. They weren't buying the records. So what music producers had to do is they had to bring in a white guy to sing Little Richard's entire album. And when he did that, Pat Boone, I believe his name was, he sold millions and millions of albums. So I go back to my original question at the beginning of this video. Does Floyd Mayweather have a good point? Does this have something to do with race? Does Abel Sanchez have a good point? Because what Abel Sanchez said almost makes him look like the Mexican version of Maurice Starr, right? Abel Sanchez, just like Maurice Starr, Abel knew that if he had a white guy that was talented, was a power puncher, could knock fighters out, he would be bigger than a black guy or even a Mexican guy. And Abel Sanchez was absolutely right. He was absolutely right. So if we're basing this off of facts and we're basing this off of history, then there is no way you can refute the fact that this sport is based on race. That is a given, okay? But at the end of the day, it's okay. Whoever you want to root for, that's on you. You can root for whoever you want. I have no problem with these fans rooting for certain people just because of their race and etc., etc. The problem I have is when you completely disrespect another race that you're not rooting for. That's when it becomes a problem, okay? You guys watch these fights. I'm sure a lot of you guys have been to live fights where you may see, a country of fans waving their flags. They're having a good time. Maybe it's some UK fans and they're singing and they're chanting and they're rooting for their own. There's nothing wrong with that. But if those same fans were to turn around and start throwing rocks at the other country that's rooting for their team, that's when it becomes a problem. And that's when it becomes a major distraction from the sport of boxing. Okay? The hate that Andre Ward is receiving, he didn't start receiving this hate until he started to call out Gennady Golovkin. I tell you guys this all the time. When certain fighters on the coincidental list are fighting other fighters on the coincidental list, these fans don't care. They don't have any problems with them, right? If Sean Porter is fighting against Keith Thurman, these fans don't have a problem because it's the lesser of two evils. But let Keith Thurman call out Gennady Golovkin. Now all of a sudden, we see all the hate. Now we seeing the rocks being thrown. Now he's being called out of his name. It's always the same pattern, guys. History repeats itself. I could talk a lot more about this, but now I'm actually about to head out and drive to the studio to do the radio show today. We'll talk a lot more about this later on. That's all I got. I'm on to the next one.